one past the hour here, so I think we'll go ahead and get this underway. So welcome everybody here to the Federal Lands Access Program presentation and webinar for prospective applicants. Just a quick intro from me. My name is Andrew Valdez. I'm a planner with Central Federal Lands, but I did spend many years in local government. And in that time, submitted a number of successful and unsuccessful FLAP applications. So I've been in your shoes, and I'm here to help you through the process. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we begin. This meeting is being recorded, and it will be posted on the South Dakota FLAP webpage. The link for that is in the meeting invites. So if you don't want your face out there in the public domain, feel free to stay off camera and you can follow up with me if you have any questions. Second, this presentation today is really geared mostly for local government agencies, since you all own and manage the facilities where FLAP dollars are going to get spent. So that means it falls on you to develop and submit the applications. And we'll get into the details of the actual application later in the presentation here. We did host a webinar last week for the Federal Land Management Agencies, or FLMAs, and it was quite well attended. So some of you may start to hear from the parks and refuges and other federal land units in your jurisdictions in the application window here. We've slotted three hours for today. I've got about 40 slides to go through. So I think the presentation itself might go about an hour, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A after I'm done. So here's our general outline for today. This may be review for some of you, but for others, this might be just totally new information. So we're going to cover federal lands, highways, and the Federal Lands Access Program, basically A to Z. And then we'll get into the elements of the application packet itself. And like I said, we'll close with Q&A. I've also got some key points just to keep an eye out for scattered throughout the presentation with the little yellow indicator there. All right, so federal lands, highways. Basically, we're the Department of Transportation for the Federal Land Management Agencies. As some of you are probably aware, a third of the United States is federal land. And stewardship of the transportation assets and systems on those federal lands is our responsibility. It's just a little history here. We're kind of the last vestige of the Federal Highway Administration that functions like a DOT, in that we plan, design, and build all of our projects. The rest of federal highways is under the federal aid system, where funding goes to the individual states, and then Federal Highways has a stewardship and oversight role with the state DOTs and other local agencies. So in South Dakota, there's a federal aid division office there in the capital. So we try to capture that mission in our statement here that I'm not going to read off. And this is where Central Federal Lands, my office, sits within US DOT. As I said, we're a division office of Federal Lands Highways, and you can see the Land Management Agency logos there. And this map just shows how the country is split up into three divisions. So we have Eastern, Central, and Western. Again, Central, our office is in Lakewood, Colorado. And South Dakota falls under our territory. So these are our core capital programs. Today, we're going to be mostly talking about the Federal Lands Transportation Program, or FLTP, and the Federal Lands Access Program, or FLAP. These two programs were established to address access to and through U.S. federal lands. And in an ideal world, these programs sort of complement and support each other. And we're going to talk a little bit about that angle a little bit later. But I think the easiest way to think about this is FLTP is federally owned and FLAP is non-federally owned, but provides access to public federal lands. FLAP projects are programmed through a call for projects, which will be opening in South Dakota on September 15th. And the owner of the facility or agency that maintains the facility is the one that has to submit the application. So typically this is a state DOT or other local government agency like a county or town. And we also have programs for U.S. federally recognized tribes and emergency federal relief, the Tribal Transportation Program and emergency relief for federally owned or ERFO. Just a little bit more about Central. As you saw on the map, we have 14 states in our territory, including Hawaii and some Pacific territories. And, you know, we're not just about moving people from A to B. Our federal lands are our national treasures. And, you know, the built infrastructure needs to take into account things like visitor experience, resource conservation, and we're really at the forefront of delivering projects like that. That's really our niche. And as I mentioned before, we provide cradle to grave services in these pretty complex environments. Central fills this niche in the transportation ecosystem. Again, since our projects tend to be pretty unique, and we've got a pretty deep bench, both among staff and contractors that we work with. And we really have a lot of expertise in delivering projects and administrative business operations that you can see here. So from, you know, long range planning to environmental clearance to project closeout, we really do it all. We do operate under performance metrics, which include obligation of over 95% of our program funds on a yearly basis. So we really are incentivized to get those dollars out the door and on the ground. We also want to see over 75% of those dollars going to projects on the ground and not going to administration and overhead. And as part of project closeout, we send out satisfaction surveys to our primary applicants. And there we also shoot for an 85% and above satisfaction rates. And, you know, partnerships are really what make good projects. We love to see multiple agencies come together and propose a project. This helps, you know, leverage limited program dollars, but it also helps address projects of greatest need that benefit multiple agencies, multiple jurisdictions. Once a project is awarded, we have a program manager assigned to the project. So, you know, that program manager becomes a single point of contact and nobody has to, you know, navigate a Byzantine federal bureaucracy to get information. We also try to cultivate relationships between the federal and local agencies. A lot of times this, you know, Fed Gov to local gov conversation doesn't happen organically. And we try to be the conduit to channel those conversations and build those relationships. Right, so now we're getting into the access program itself. So it's a federal program authorized by Congress in national transportation legislation. This was a new program established in MAP 21, which you may have heard of, and it's been continued through every reauthorization through the current one, which is the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or bill. You may have also heard of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Those are one and the same thing. Bill authorized FLAP at about $300 million a year through the lifetime of that act, and that's 2022 through 2026. We do hope that Congress will reauthorize FLAP in the next transportation bill. And again, the purpose of the program is to improve transportation facilities that provide access to, are adjacent to, or are located within federal lands, with an emphasis on federal recreation sites and federal economic generators. And we'll unpack that a little bit later in the presentation. So FLAP funding, it is allocated by legislative formula, and that formula hasn't changed since MAP 21. But essentially, it's a function of federal land mass within a state, and federal public roadway mileage by state. And this is how funding shakes out on a national basis. Unsurprisingly, Western states are heavily favored since they have so much federal lands. South Dakota comes in 23rd with 5.4% of federal land mass, and that gives you an allocation of $1.2 million a year. Frankly, that's not a lot of money in the transportation world, and of course, I wish we had more. But if we're talking, projects like unpaved roads, trails, natural surface trailheads, planning projects, or leverage opportunities, that funding starts to go a little bit farther. The bipartisan infrastructure law did remove the local match requirement. There used to be a local match requirement, cash match for this program. But this is what, and it removed that. This is what the requirements used to be for the states and territories in central federal lands. So you can see South Dakota had at one point an 18.05 cash match requirement. Obviously, this also puts pressure on limited program dollars. But there may be instances where it makes sense for a local or state agency to want to mostly fund a project with federal aid dollars and then use FLAP as a supplementary funding source. And then they also get to leverage, our design and project delivery expertise. That's not a totally uncommon scenario, and of course helps us extend the program in any one state. And here's a rundown of eligible funding sources. So federal aid, like I mentioned, FLTP also counts. Again, the FLTP program is for federally owned transportation assets, and those programs are managed by the land management agencies themselves. So in the meeting last week, I flagged this for the FLMA folks. And if, for example, there's an FLTP project, but the need actually extends beyond the federal boundaries, it would make sense to bundle those projects into one package for us to design and deliver. There's significant savings when we can do projects like that. And there's a way to indicate that in the actual application package. And just a couple of notes here. We can't receive like private or nonprofit funding directly, but a local agency that can bring those dollars could use those for leverage. We also work with the applicants to develop a reimbursement program that's flexible. So if, for example, a county was contributing, general fund dollars on a project, but they don't have all the money available up front, that's done through reimbursable agreement throughout the lifetime of a project. Here's a little bit more on leveraged funds. Of course, direct cash transfers are always kind of the preferred way of doing business, but things like right-of-way acquisition, utility relocation costs, and other hard costs, those can all count as leveraged funds. Labor, equipment, materials, or any type of force account where monies are required to be spent, or any work prior to an execution of agreement with federal highways, typically not allowed as leverage. So here's a little more on the FLAP, FLTP leverage angle. As I said, these two programs can be bundled, and we do like to see that. The project decision committee, or PDC, and FLMA would need to concur on the project, and we'll talk a little bit more about the PDC later. Of course, we want to see the projects be contiguous or at least adjacent. And then the project has to be managed as again, one delivery package, so we can realize those economies of scale and mobilization benefits. In certain instances, the PDC may ask the local agency to contribute some funding. And that's just to ensure we're not, absorbing all the project risk, but this would kind of be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. This is just a graphic example of how a joint FLTP, FLAP project could work. So say you have a $1 million flat project to improve a county road to the entrance of a national forest. And then separately, there's an FLTP project to improve the scenic drive, to the parking area. Those projects could be combined in one FLAP application. And, this would result in the applicant having, low or no cost burden. And then we can deliver the project, which then would free up the administrative burden for the local agency. And then on the application itself, you can claim an overmatch of leveraged funds. This is also great for us because it's far cheaper to deliver, one larger project than to try and mobilize for two smaller projects. In the webinar last week, we made the FLMAs aware of this option. So hopefully there's some projects out there in the pipeline that line up with the needs of the non-federal system. So question is, does Central have to deliver and lead the selected projects? It's not required, but typically we do deliver and lead the selected projects. And again, this is something that you would indicate on the application itself. That's because this is our business model. Again, our niche. This is why we exist. There are some exceptions to this that you can see here, but they are relatively rare. And we do put some requirements on the local agency if they want to do the delivery. All right, so moving on, who makes the programming decisions? So each state has a programming decisions committee, again, or a PDC. This is a 3-person volunteer board that's usually established by something like a charter. And it's made up of a state DOT rep, a local government rep, and then Federal Highways has 1 seat. So for this call, the Federal Highways rep will be Jessica Forrest. Do you wanna pop on camera and say hi real quick, Jessica?
Yep, hold on. My camera. Hey everyone, I'm new as the FLAP PDC member and program manager. Jill Locken is overseeing the whole program for FLAP, but I'll be the program manager for South Dakota. So happy to be here for you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. And you can see, the PDC responsibilities here, but it's essentially their task to ensure proper stewardship of the program, really from a statewide perspective. It's not their job to advocate for, special projects in their districts or anything like that. And sometimes members will recuse themselves from scoring a particular application because of a real or perceived conflict. But again, it's to manage the program and the funds and a statewide basis as best as possible. Now, what you don't see here in the PDC is FLMA representation. Each state has an FLMA technical advisory group, or TAG. These are typically FLMA reps from regional or national levels, and they advise the PDC, but they don't participate in the actual programming decisions. Just because the FLAP program, the money's going towards non-federally owned assets, we give the asset owners kind of final say. But feedback from the tags is hugely important. So, just to note here that the FLMAs do play a crucial role in deliberations and programming decisions. All right, now we're going to talk eligibility. So per legislation, any public highway, road, bridge, trail, or transit system located on or adjacent to federal lands. And these activities include rehabilitation, restoration, construction, reconstruction, engineering, environmental compliance, operations and maintenance of transit facilities, and planning and research. But again, title and maintenance responsibility must be vested with a non-federal entity. And again, these are the agencies that end up being the applicants. There were some notable changes to FLAP under bill. As I mentioned, no more local match requirement, but it can help in certain situations. And there is expanded eligibility for a couple of items here. Context-sensitive solutions. These are projects that preserve scenic, aesthetic, historic, or environmental resources. So think of like a raised boardwalk over a wetland, for example. There's also eligibility for signage, wayfinding, landscaping, and other visual mitigations. We would typically want to see a transportation project as sort of the primary component of a project package. And then these would be sort of add-ons, a standalone, landscaping project on its own without a transportation component. We wouldn't want to typically see something like that. But these other additions and amenities can be add-ons. Here's some common eligibility scenarios. So at the top there, we have a road or facility that starts outside the federal land and then ends inside the federal land. And you can see that kind of that blue segment there that goes into the green. That full alignment or that full segment would be eligible with a maintenance agreement where the local agency agrees to manage that segment of roadway or trail that might be owned, might be federally owned. The second one down there is kind of the most straightforward scenario. You have a road or facility that starts outside the federal land, ends at the federal land boundary. That's kind of the most straightforward scenario that we see. Or you can have a road or facility that starts outside and ends short of the federal land boundary. but it does eventually lead to the unit on the network. We typically wouldn't want to see anything further than like 10 miles away from the federal land boundary, but if it leads to the federal land boundary, provides access, that would be eligible. Tribal roads maintained by the tribe are eligible. I believe there's a number of federally recognized tribes in South Dakota, but the roadway must access some federal land other than just the tribe. So tribal lands are not eligible for FLAP as the destination for the program. There's the TTP, which I mentioned earlier, that kind of covers that need. And then finally, land leased by the federal government. So the underlying ownership is not federal. That's not eligible. This is another scenario that we see sometimes and might be applicable here in South Dakota. You can have a state park surrounding a reservoir that's managed by a federal entity like the Army Corps of Engineers or Bureau of Reclamation, roads or even docks leading to the water or within the park that are not federally maintained are eligible. And that's another opportunity perhaps for leverage funds to be proposed in an application. Say if the state park is already planning some sort of improvement to a site or even a planning project, for example. Right, moving on to preferred projects. So as we mentioned before, preference is given to transportation facilities providing access to federal high-use recreation and economic generators. Again, that's in the legislation. Federal recreation is defined as any site used by the public to recreate on federal lands. High use is defined as kind of a regional or area and not compared to like an entire state or county. Not every county will have Mount Rushmore, for example. And then federal economic generators are defined as any use on federal lands that increases aggregate investments or economic activity for a local community and or region. So think maybe like a ski area. You guys probably don't have ski areas, but energy production, sites that have regional or national draw or major employment centers, those would be economic generators. And these are the elements that make up a strong application. We typically like to see things like full roadway reconstruction or rehabilitation, anything that expands modal access to a federal land unit, like you know, a multi-use path or a bike lane, wholesale bridge replacement. Obviously, some of this is sort of a judgment call. That's you know, falls on the PDC and their deliberations. But if we see, you know, a reasonable scope, realistic project estimate, good FLMA coordination, and the project does meet the flat vision, that's going to be a strong project. As far as weaker applications go, we typically don't like to see maintenance only projects. You know, the purpose of the program is to expand access and not, you know, fix a county's deferred maintenance backlog. Obviously, you know, unclear or poorly written applications don't fare too well. Pictures are always worth 1,000 words, so photos, maps, whatever context you can provide in an application to clearly communicate the purpose and need of the project. We also have a section to add a link to a video file or record a YouTube video. Those are hugely helpful in assessing applications. And then, of course, the project must meet kind of the basic eligibility criteria. and again, good coordination with the FLMAs. Sometimes, we will see, applications that seem more like rural or urban, like commuter routes, or like neighborhood streets. And the federal access component is sort of tangential to the access, and maybe only, 50% or less of traffic counts have some sort of federal lands nexus. That's okay. But in cases like that, I think we would want to see, or the PDC is going to want to see, commensurate funding to match and fill that gap there. Since the access component is sort of secondary to another purpose. All right, so now we're going to talk about the application process. So the link you see at the top slot of the slide there will take you to the main FLAP landing page. And there we have a map of the United States with all the states and info, kind of high level info about the FLAP program. South Dakota has now turned green, which means the process is open and we're accepting applications. These calls are typically open for 90 days. So we set a due date to receive all the applications by December 15th for this call. We do try to do calls every 3 to 4 years, but inflation has really hammered construction costs. So at this point, I don't know we have visibility into when the next call might be for South Dakota. So if you click on South Dakota, this is what the page currently looks like. And this is where you get the most up-to-date call information, as well as all the application materials. So while the call for projects is open, might be a good idea to go ahead and bookmark this page right here. Here's our general timeline. As I mentioned, we'll have the application window open until December 15th. And final programming decisions maybe sometime by like next summer. And then implementation will really depend on the details of the projects that come in. These are your local South Dakota PDC members, in case one of you have a question for one of them. And these are the links where you'll download application materials, all the supplemental materials. This is also where I'll post a PDF of this slide deck and the recording you guys see here today. We've tried to make the application itself, as straightforward and self-explanatory as possible. And in the downloadable PDF, I've provided a lot of like sample text to try and give you a sense of what we're trying to get at with the questions. Make sure to take that sample text out and put in your own text. I think what we want to do here, if we try to do this line by line, it's going to take all day. So the best way to do this is I'll point out the major elements of the application. And then, of course, if there's any questions, you can follow up with me afterwards. So the first few pages here are just, background data on you as the applicant and the project. So you're the agency with ownership and maintenance responsibility, project length, other data inputs like traffic counts. You should be able to get some of that data from SD.dot. If you don't have exact numbers, estimates are totally okay. And this is also where you would estimate the percentage of daily traffic that's accessing the federal land. Also, if your project includes a bridge, you would attach a bridge inspection report. There's a box for narrative on safety history. So this is where you'd get into crash data. Again, if you don't have exact numbers, you can provide anecdotal information. And again, generally, the more background you can provide, the better. And box 10 here is where you would indicate if there's an FLTP project in proximity. So again, get with the local rangers or park superintendents to see if there's any of those in the area. Page 2 of the application gets into information about the proposed project. This is where you would explain purpose and need, as well as a detailed description of the proposed work, including if the project maybe could be phased. As you can see, there's, again, sample text in all these boxes that should provide a pretty good guidepost. The next page is right-of-way, utility, and environmental considerations. Again, it's okay if you don't have all this information when you submit. If we get to the point of sending a scoping engineer, they'll flesh out all these details during the scoping visit. And this is also where you'll indicate the proposed lead agency. Again, this is typically Central Federal Lands, unless there's a compelling reason for another agency to assume the project. Next page is project cost estimation and funding sources. So this part is really for us to get a rough order of magnitude cost. We're not really, trying to get down to the penny estimates. And we have provided some cost estimation workbooks in the application materials that you can download. Honestly, they are a little technical. So if you have a roadway engineer on staff to help you out, that can be helpful. But again, it's okay if you don't have all that information up front. This is also where you'd indicate any leveraged funds, anything that's not FLAP. And there's a text box there again at the bottom for you to describe that funding picture in narrative. And also where you would indicate if there's an FLTP project in proximity, you'd want to have those conversations with the FLMA to see if there's any of those projects in the mix. This is what the cost estimate templates look like. And we have different tabs for different kinds of projects. So like for paved road, gravel road, multi-use path, parking lot. And we've tried to pre-populate these forms with as much information as possible. So whoever's scoping the project would just be entering quantities there, and the formulas will give you an output for total project cost at the bottom there. Again, don't worry too much about getting exact numbers. We're trying to get a rough order of magnitude of cost. Alrighty, evaluation criteria. So it's up to the PDC to set the exact evaluation criteria and sort of the weighting of these categories. But they will be, some configuration of these 9. And, all pretty straightforward here. Federal lands access, high use or economic generator, public access, safety improvement, preservation. This is more about like asset management and state of good repair, sustainability and environmental, project cost and risk, partnerships and coordination, and alignment with the FLAPS program and vision. So, when you're filling out these applications, just sort of keep these criteria in mind and speak to them as much as you can in the narrative. We've also provided non-construction worksheets for projects like, transit, planning, research. This is less quantitative, obviously, and kind of more narrative based. I'd say the best like research or planning type projects are ones that have a clear path to lead to projects. So things like corridor plans or feasibility studies, those would compete fairly well. Transit's always kind of a tough one, since FLAP is sort of a one-time infusion of capital. It doesn't really make sense to say stand up a transit operation with FLAP alone, since operations and maintenance costs can be significant and ongoing, right? But say like an existing transit operator needs funding for some capital improvements or even maybe rolling stock, that's a project that might fare a little bit better. This is the endorsement form for the facility owner to fill out, just one page. And then it's just so that we know that someone is basically on the hook for upkeep of the facility once it's been turned over and the project's complete. And then similarly, this is the FLMA support form, also just one page, but this helps us see that there's been coordination and collaboration with the land management agency. We wouldn't want to fund a project that's not in alignment with the management objectives of the unit. And then lastly, there's an instruction sheet and checklist. This is just to help you guys kind of stay organized and make sure you didn't miss anything. This is also where you'd paste a link to a downloadable video or YouTube video. And it kind of, these are, again, optional, but they do provide you an opportunity to kind of sell the project a little bit, and provides an opportunity for the PDC to really get a sense of what things look like on the ground before we send out like a scoping engineer or something like that. And here's our timeline for South Dakota. As we've said, we'll have the call for projects open, September 15th to December 15th, 90 days. We're targeting to have the deliberative process complete sometime in the spring of next year. And then we should have a short list and scoping efforts complete sometime, say, late spring, early summer, and then a final program of projects, hopefully by the summer. The projects themselves, when we would actually, do construction, that's really all dependent on the projects themselves. So TBD on project design and delivery. And here's sort of the process for next steps if your project is selected. So if you are shortlisted, you'll get a notification letter from us, and we'll set up some meetings to talk through any financial arrangements if leveraged funds are being used. We also have things like an engagement letter that the project rep will sign. And then we'll work with you to set up a site visit for our scoping engineers to refine those cost estimates and make sure we're kind of in the ballpark for the project. That'll probably be, a little bit weather dependent. But again, we're shooting for spring. And if the project still looks good, the PDC will place the project into our final program, and then we'll have we'll work out a delivery schedule based on the details of the project. And then again, we'll typically take it from there and deliver the project cradle to grave. So in closing, just a couple of final thoughts here, tips for success. If you've got a project and you're not really sure if it's going to be great, just apply anyway. We'll figure out the details later, but get the projects in. If you don't apply, you won't get selected, right? On the main flat page, you can read all of the eligibility guidance. So spend a little bit of time on the FLAP website itself and make sure your project is kind of hitting the mark there. All the PDF forms for the application, as I said, are already uploaded on the South Dakota page. So download those, make sure they can work for you, make sure you have the right software. you know, there's no glitches or anything like that. And again, always reach out to me if there's any questions there. Answer as many questions as completely as possible. Again, like I said, you may not have, you know, hard quantitative data from a traffic counter or something like that. But if you know that, you know, there's seasonal patterns and we get about 100,000 visitors a year or something like that, as much context you can provide is what we're shooting for. Again, the 9 evaluation criteria, again, those weightings are going to be determined by the PDC, but just keep in mind that they're all going to be scored with some configuration of those evaluation criteria. We also like to see, so again, obviously you got to do the endorsement forms, but we also allow letters of support to be included in an application package. So, you know, any partnerships that you've developed that are in support of the project, other local agencies or entities that like the project, friends of group, say, for example, you can provide all of those in your own narrative as attachments to the application. And that helps provide a little bit more context and color on what the purpose and need of the project is. Photos, maps, again, you know, we want to see as much, you know, the narrative descriptions are great, but photos and maps can go a long way. FLA maps, information, you know, other links to other things, brochures that help show the important use of the site. Sometimes we'll see a project that even has like a little bit of conceptual design on it. You know, some artist did, you know, this is what this bridge would look like, and we really need it. All those things can be helpful. Realistic cost estimate, I would say here, it would be better to overestimate than underestimate the cost. And then be as clear as possible on your funding sources. In the application, you could submit letters of commitment if there are funding sources other than the applicant itself. And some tips for FLMA coordination. So yeah, coordinate early and often. If there's you know, a refuge in your county and you don't know who to go to, we could probably find you contacts. So we're happy to facilitate some of those conversations so that you're having a direct conversation with the right folks on the ground. You'll want to coordinate at the unit level, but also try and coordinate at the regional level. Regional folks are the ones that are going to have the best visibility on the FLTP side. And again, we can make those introductions and facilitate those conversations if needed. And, you know, what are the FLMA's priorities? You know, are they trying to build visitation? Are they trying to, you know, make it less accessible in one part, but more accessible in another area? What are their management objectives? And does this project, you know, really align with what they're trying to do there on the ground? Also really important. And with the, you know, is the FLMA ready for, you know, increased or changed visitation patterns? And does this project support that, or is it kind of, you know, in contrary to that? So I think that might be it. You know, thank you everybody for getting through this here with me. I sent out a PDF version of this slide deck to everyone that was on the invite. As I said, we'll also have a recording online probably tomorrow of this video, and then also the PDF with all of our contact information. And yeah, I would just turn it over now to the group to see if there's any questions that we can answer for you. Don't be shy. Not everybody at once.
Andrew, did you mention or could you repeat when applications are due?
Oh yeah, so December 15th will be sort of the last day. So any time between now and then, you can send them to me, andrew.valdez@dot.gov. You can also send them to cflplanning@dot.gov, and all of those instructions are in that instruction and checklist PDF on the FLAP site. We only have a few people on here. Does everyone want to say where they're from?
Sure, I have a question too.
Yeah, go ahead, Troy.
I'm from Meade County, South Dakota, Sturgis area. I missed the beginning of this. I apologize for that. I was a little late, but I was just making sure I understand that the purpose of the grant is to better access federal lands. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. All right, that's what I needed to know.
Yeah, this is Joe Miller from Pennington County. So I'm guessing the Badlands National Park or tribal thinking about submitting possible application for, like, say, Bombing Range Road going down into the Pine Ridge Reservation, which also has the Badlands National Park down there. Would that be something that would be applicable?
Sounds like it. I would say so, without, knowing all the details. Most likely, yes. And I'd be happy to talk, offline with you about eligibility. I've never been to South Dakota, so I'm not super familiar with the landscape, but just based off of what you described, that sounds like it'd be a good project.
Yeah, Andrew, if you don't mind if I add, so as long as the destination includes the Badlands, so the tribe can submit an application or the county can submit an application, but the destination, as far as FLMA, cannot be the tribal lands. It could be one of the destinations, but the requirement would be that it would also be providing access to the national park.
Yeah, the national park. This road runs right through the national park to the tribe, or to the reservation, essentially. So we also have several roads that run through Black Hills National Forest. We actually have an agreement with the National Forest to maintain these roads as county roads. If we wanted to upgrade those roads would also be eligible. Is that correct?
Yeah, it sounds like if you already have a maintenance agreement in place, we'd want to see that. But if there is a maintenance agreement in place and you're kind of treating it as a county road, all good.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And I saw Sophie hop on camera just for a minute here. Did you have something, Sophie? Guess not. All right. Well, I'm just going to go down the list here. Eric Radke, where are you from? Is it Pennington? Pennington County Highway?
Yes, that's correct. Rapid City.
All righty. Cody Green. I can't see the email address. What about Avery Price? Oh, it looks like you might be from the division office.
Oh yeah, I'm from CFO. I'm a programmer. I'm on rotation.
Oh, great. Jason Jungworth. Maybe State DOT?
Nope, Jason Irwith with in Pier with the Game Fish and Parks Department.
Ah, great, great, great. What about Liz Marianne?
Yes, I'm Liz Hassett. I'm with Pennington County and I'm a grant manager. So I'm just hopping on to hear more about this project.
Great. Looks like Sophie just jumped on camera. Hi, Sophie.
Hi, my name is Sophie Johnson, and I am actually with a planning district located in Sioux Falls. But a couple months ago, I submitted a grant application for like a bike trail path along the Missouri River. It's like the scenic and national river in the southeastern portion of the state. Unfortunately, it didn't get raised grant funding, but hoping maybe this would be a good option for a study. And then I know you said that you don't know exactly when funding would come around again. It's sort of on a couple year cadence, but thinking that maybe that might be a good path forward to even see if it's feasible.
Yeah, so this would be like a feasibility study. And there is some sort of federal lands component to the corridor.
Well, I think they want to do like a bike path across a couple counties along the scenic river, which is I'm hoping it's a federal land. I guess that would be a good place to start.
It might be. Again, I'm not super familiar with the geography, but why don't we follow up offline and we can see if it meets kind of the basic eligibility criteria there.
Okay, thank you.
I think like doesn't Army Corps like manage like some waterways, I think through South Dakota?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's look at that. That could be a good one.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And I think that might be everybody. Was there anybody else that I didn't call out? I don't think so. Any last questions? Well, again, thank you all so much. Joe, it looks like you just came off mute there.
Yeah, I was just, I guess it kind of just came to my brain here, but is there a certain dollar amount allocated for each state, or is this a nationwide type grant program and we're competing against other states, or does each state have a certain dollar amount that's allocated to it for this grant?
Yeah. So we did cover that at the beginning. I think you might have missed that. So South Dakota, it is by state, and South Dakota gets 1.2 million a year. We're looking at programming anywhere between 2 to 4 years of funding. It is unfortunately rather limited for South Dakota. But again, if we're talking about certain projects might really fit the bill, planning, trails, unpaved gravel roads, things like that. Those kinds of projects, I think, kind of would fit the niche for how much funding is available. And again, Joe, so I think I've got your contact, but the recording, the full recording of the presentation will be on the South Dakota FLAP webpage if you want to go back and listen.
Okay, yeah, there's just a couple different projects rolling around in my brain that I think would definitely apply. So I'll work with Liz, our grant manager, and then Eric Radke, our project manager here at the Highway Department, figure out what we want to do and what we want to submit. So it sounds like it's pretty open to pretty much anything. So.
Great, yeah. Well, all right, everybody. Thanks again, and feel free if you have any other questions you want to send my way between now and December 15th. My door is open. Much appreciated, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting to know the state a little bit better, if only from my desktop. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll be in touch. Much appreciated. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you.